Beneath our feet, the earth holds secrets older than memory itself. Entire worlds that may have once sheltered civilizations from fire, flood, and catastrophe. Tonight, we descend into those hidden depths, following whispers of tunnels and cities carved into stone. Before we begin, tell me, what time is it where you are right now? And from where in the world are you listening? And if you wish to join more journeys into the forgotten and the mysterious, remember to subscribe so you never drift past the next story waiting below. There exists a question that haunts the quiet corners of human consciousness, whispered through countless generations like a half-remembered dream. Why do so many of our oldest stories speak of worlds hidden beneath the earth? Of entire civilizations that once thrived in darkness, away from the sun's warm embrace. From the ancient tablets of Mesopotamia to the oral traditions of indigenous peoples across every continent, these tales persist with an unsettling consistency, as if humanity carries within its collective memory the echo of something profound and forgotten. Perhaps it begins with a simple truth that our ancestors understood far better than we do today. The surface world, for all its beauty and abundance, has always been a place of devastating fragility. The archaeological record whispers of sudden endings, of thriving cities buried beneath ash in a single day, of coastlines swallowed by waves that rose higher than mountains, of ice ages that descended like curtains across entire continents, transforming lush valleys into frozen wastelands in what might have been mere decades rather than millennia. When we trace our fingers across the timeline of human land existence, we find these punctuation marks of catastrophe scattered throughout history like dark stars in a constellation of survival. The great flood stories that appear in over 500 cultures worldwide, each carrying remarkably similar details of waters that rose to cover the highest peaks. The impact craters hidden beneath ice and sediment, speaking of cosmic visitors that arrived with the force to reshape continents. The volcanic eruptions, so massive they blocked out the sun for years, creating nuclear winters that lasted generations. In the face of such overwhelming destruction, where does one hide when the sky itself becomes the enemy? The answer, perhaps, lies not in fleeing across the horizontal plane of the Earth's surface, but in descending vertically into the ancient embrace of stone and soil, where the temperature remains constant through all seasons, where underground streams provide fresh water even when the surface rivers run dry, where the chaos above becomes nothing more than a distant rumble through countless tons of protecting rock. If you find yourself drawn to these mysteries that lie buried beneath our feet, consider joining our journey into the depths of forgotten history, where each discovery leads us deeper into questions that mainstream archaeology has yet to fully answer. The more we examine the delicate balance that has always governed life on our planet's surface, the more we begin to understand why our ancestors might have looked to the earth itself as their ultimate sanctuary. The surface world, despite its verdant beauty and life-giving sunlight, exists in a state of constant vulnerability that would have been intimately familiar to ancient peoples, who lived much closer to the raw forces of nature than we do today. Consider the ring of fire that encircles the Pacific, where tectonic plates grind against each other in a slow-motion dance of creation and destruction that can unleash its fury without warning. the supervolcanoes that sleep beneath seemingly peaceful landscapes, capable of ejecting enough ash and gas into the atmosphere to plunge the entire world into darkness for years at a time. The asteroid impacts that arrive from the depths of space with no announcement save, perhaps, a brief streak of light across the night sky before everything changes forever. The geological evidence speaks of ice ages that advanced and retreated across the northern continents like breathing, each cycle capable of rendering vast regions uninhabitable for thousands of years, of sea levels that rose and fell by hundreds of feet as ice caps melted and reformed, swallowing coastal civilizations beneath the waves or stranding them far inland as the waters receded, of magnetic pole reversals that left the Earth temporarily unprotected from cosmic radiation, potentially triggering mass extinctions and forcing life to seek shelter in caves and underground chambers. Even without these grand catastrophes, the surface world presents daily challenges that would have tested the survival skills of ancient peoples. Droughts that could last for decades, turning fertile river valleys into dust bowls. Floods that could arrive with the spring melt or seasonal rains washing away entire settlements in a matter of hours. Wars and invasions that swept across the landscape like wildfire, leaving only those who could vanish completely untouched by the violence. In this context, the idea of preparing underground refuges begins to seem not like the product of paranoid minds, but rather the logical response of people who understood that survival often depends on having somewhere to disappear when the surface world becomes untenable. The Earth itself becomes not just the foundation of life, but its ultimate protector, offering stable temperatures, protection from radiation, access to groundwater, and most importantly, invisibility from whatever threats might be sweeping across the world above. This understanding of surface vulnerability leads us naturally into the rich tapestry of myths and legends that speak of hollow worlds and underground kingdoms. Stories that appear with remarkable consistency across cultures that had no contact with each other, suggesting that these tales might be more than mere fantasy born from human imagination. The Hopi people of the American Southwest speak of previous worlds that were destroyed by great catastrophes, with the survivors emerging from underground caves into each new world that followed. Their emergent stories describe not just spiritual transformation, but detailed accounts of actual caves and tunnels where their ancestors waited out periods of surface devastation, complete with descriptions of underground chambers large enough to house entire communities, connected by passages that stretched for miles beneath the desert floor. In the Hindu tradition, the ancient texts describe Patala, the underworld realm that exists beneath our known world, populated by the Nagas, serpent beings who possess great wisdom and technological knowledge. These descriptions speak not of a hellish domain of punishment, but of a sophisticated civilization with its own cities, rivers, and palaces, suggesting memories of actual underground settlements that were advanced enough to seem magical to surface dwellers who encountered them. The Greek myths tell us of Hades and the underworld, but also of more mysterious realms, like the cave of the Cumean Sibyl, where prophets descended into the depths to receive visions and knowledge that could not be found in the world above. These stories often include specific geographical details, directions to actual cave entrances, and descriptions of underground chambers that modern archaeology has sometimes confirmed to exist exactly where the ancient texts claimed they would. Be found top from Tibet come legends of Shambhala, the hidden kingdom that exists somewhere beneath the earth, populated by enlightened beings who preserve ancient wisdom and technology, while waiting for the right time to return to the surface world. These stories describe elaborate tunnel systems connecting hidden cities across the Himalayas, with underground rivers and caverns that remain habitable even when the surface world is locked in ice and snow. What makes these stories particularly intriguing is not just their widespread distribution across unconnected cultures, but the specific technical details they often contain. Descriptions of ventilation systems that bring fresh air deep underground, methods for bringing light into subterranean chambers, techniques for storing food and water for extended periods, engineering solutions for drainage and waste management in underground communities. Details that suggest these myths might be cultural memories of real survival strategies rather than pure imagination. The consistency of these stories across time and geography points toward something deeper than coincidence, something that might represent humanity's preserved memory of times when going underground was not just an option for survival, but an absolute necessity for continued existence. When we turn from myth to the hard evidence preserved in stone and ice, we find a geological record that speaks of catastrophes so sudden and severe that they could indeed have driven entire populations to seek refuge in the deepest places they could find. The Earth itself has recorded these moments of crisis in layers of sediment, in the chemical composition of ice cores, in the scattered debris of impact craters, creating a timeline of disasters that aligns remarkably well with the catastrophe. Stories preserved in human oral tradition, the Younger Dryas impact event, which occurred approximately 12,800 years ago, left evidence of massive fires across North America, with a layer of impact debris that can be found in geological cores. From across the continent, this event appears to have triggered a return to Ice Age conditions that lasted for over 1,000 years, creating precisely the kind of prolonged surface crisis that would have made underground refuge not just attractive, but essential for survival. The eruption of the Locher See volcano in Germany, around 12,900 years ago, deposited ash across an area stretching from Britain to Poland, creating a nuclear winter effect that would have made surface agriculture impossible for years. Similar supervolcano events, like the Toba eruption 74,000 years ago, may have reduced the entire human population to a few thousand individuals, survivors who could only have endured such conditions by finding shelter in caves or constructed underground refuges. The geological evidence for massive flooding events is equally compelling. The scablands of Washington state show clear signs of catastrophic flooding that carved channels hundreds of feet deep through solid bedrock. The Black Sea appears to have filled rapidly around 7,500 years ago, potentially displacing coastal populations who would have had to flee inland or find alternative shelter. Similar flood evidence can be found on every continent, suggesting that our ancestors lived through multiple episodes of rising waters that could have made underground refuge the only viable survival strategy. Perhaps most intriguingly, Recent archaeological discoveries have begun to reveal the extent to which ancient peoples actually did create elaborate underground facilities, not just simple cave shelters, but engineered complexes with sophisticated ventilation systems, water management, food storage capabilities, and living spaces designed to house large populations for extended periods of time. The evidence suggests that our ancestors were far more prepared for catastrophic events than we might have imagined, and that the underground world they created might have been extensive enough to preserve not just individual families or small groups, but entire communities, complete with their knowledge, technologies, and cultural traditions, waiting in the depths for the surface world to become habitable once again. Among all the underground complexes that have been discovered around the world, none captures the imagination quite like the vast subterranean city of Derinkuyu in the Cappadocia region of Turkey, a marvel of ancient engineering that demonstrates just how sophisticated underground civilizations could become when necessity demanded it. This buried metropolis, carved directly from the soft volcanic rock, extends downward through at least 18 levels, reaching depths of over 200 feet beneath the Earth's surface, with room to house an estimated 20,000 people along with their livestock, food stores, and all the necessities of extended underground life. The complexity of Derinkuyu's design reveals a level of planning and engineering skill that speaks to generations of refinement and expansion. The upper levels contained living quarters, kitchens, and storage areas, while deeper sections housed chapels, schools, and meeting halls. An elaborate ventilation system consisting of over 15,000 carefully positioned air shafts ensured that fresh air could circulate throughout even the deepest chambers. Underground wells provided access to fresh water that remained uncontaminated. Massive stone doors, weighing several tons each, could be rolled into place to seal off sections of the city, creating multiple layers of defense against any threat that might breach the outer entrances. What makes Derinkuyu particularly fascinating is that it was not an isolated creation, but part of a vast network of underground cities, connected by tunnels that stretched for miles beneath the Cappadocian landscape. Archaeologists have identified over 200 underground settlements in the region, some smaller family shelters, others nearly as large as Derinkuyu itself. The tunnel connections between these sites suggest a coordinated defense and survival network that could have allowed populations to move unseen beneath the surface, emerging at different points across a wide area depending on where safety could be found. The historical record suggests that these underground cities were used repeatedly throughout history, serving as refuges during various invasions, religious persecutions, and natural disasters. Early Christians fled here during Roman persecution. Byzantine populations sheltered in these depths during Arab raids. Local communities took refuge during Mongol invasions, each period of use adding new modifications and improvements to the basic structure, creating a palimpsest of survival strategies written in stone. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Derinkuyu is what it suggests about the broader capabilities of ancient engineering. If one region could create such an extensive underground network, what might exist in other parts of the world where the geological conditions are equally favorable? The soft, volcanic rock of Cappadocia made excavation relatively easy, but many other regions offer similar opportunities for underground construction. Limestone caves that can be expanded and modified, sandstone formations that can be carved, us to reconsider our assumptions about the technological capabilities of ancient peoples and their understanding of large-scale engineering projects. Complete communities that could remain hidden for as long as necessary while maintaining all the essential functions of civilization in the depths below. The sophisticated underground networks of Turkey lead us naturally across the world to the Americas, where the civilizations of Mesoamerica created their own elaborate systems of caves and tunnels that served both spiritual and practical purposes, weaving together the sacred and the strategic in ways that reveal a deep understanding of the Earth's protective potential. The Maya, Aztec, and other indigenous cultures of this region developed a complex relationship with the underground world that went far beyond simple shelter, creating sacred spaces and hidden passages that connected the physical and spiritual realms while providing very real advantages for survival and defense. Beneath the Great Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza, archaeologists have discovered a natural cenote, a water-filled cave system that the Maya considered a gateway to the underworld. But this was not merely a symbolic connection, as the cenote provided a reliable source of fresh water even during the driest seasons, making it a crucial resource for the city's survival. Similar underwater cave systems throughout the Yucatan Peninsula served as both sacred sites and practical water sources, with some connected by underwater passages that allowed movement between settlements without detection from the surface. The recently discovered tunnel beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent at Teotihuacan extends over 100 meters underground and appears to have been deliberately sealed around 1,800 years ago. Its chambers filled with mysterious artifacts, including thousands of metallic spheres, jade statues, and rubber balls. The purpose of this elaborate underground complex remains unclear, perhaps as a refuge for the city's elite during times of crisis, or as a repository for knowledge and treasures that needed to be preserved against future disasters. Even more intriguing are the widespread South American legends of vast tunnel networks that supposedly connect ancient cities across thousands of miles, stretching from the mountains of Peru to the jungles of Brazil. While these stories have often been dismissed as myth, recent discoveries have begun to suggest that some underground connections between ancient sites may indeed exist. The Inca themselves were master tunnel builders, creating not just the famous roads that crossed the surface of their empire, but also underground passages that allowed rapid and secret movement of people and goods across vast distances. The sacred caves of the Maya were often modified and expanded, with stone walls, drainage systems, and artificial chambers added to natural formations. These modifications suggest that the caves served not just as temporary refuges during specific emergencies, but as permanent alternative spaces where communities could retreat whenever surface conditions became dangerous. The spiritual significance of these underground spaces, often associated with creation myths and underworld journeys, may have helped ensure that the knowledge of their locations and the skills needed to maintain them were preserved across generations. Perhaps most significantly, was not seen as a desperate last resort, but as a natural and acceptable part of life. The underworld was not a place of fear and punishment, but a realm of wisdom, protection, and spiritual power. This cultural attitude would have made it much easier for populations to accept extended periods of underground living when circumstances required it, and might explain how sophisticated underground communities could develop and thrive rather than merely survive in the depths. While human engineering created impressive underground refuges, the natural world had already spent millions of years crafting its own subterranean sanctuaries, vast cave systems, and underground rivers that offered ready-made shelters for those who knew how to find and navigate them. These natural underground environments created spaces that were often more extensive and climatically stable than anything human hands could construct, providing not just temporary refuge, but potentially permanent alternative worlds beneath the familiar surface landscape. The world's great cave systems reveal the true scale of the underground realm that has always existed parallel to our surface world. Mammoth Cave in Kentucky extends for over 400 mapped miles of passages, with new sections still being discovered regularly. The caves of Agtalek in Hungary and Slovakia contain underground rivers and chambers large enough to house cathedrals. The Sun Track cave system in Vietnam includes passages wide enough for underground rivers that could be navigated by boat. Hundreds of feet above, these natural underground environments offer several crucial advantages that would have made them attractive. To ancient peoples seeking long-term refuge, the temperature in deep caves remains constant year-round, typically matching the average annual temperature of the region above, providing natural climate control that would have been especially valuable during ice ages or periods of extreme weather. Underground streams and rivers provide reliable sources of fresh water that are protected from surface contamination. The darkness, while challenging, also provides complete concealment from any threats that might be searching the surface world. But, perhaps most importantly, these natural cave systems often connect across vast distances, creating hidden transportation networks that would have allowed underground movement across regions and even between different geographical areas underground. Rivers that flow for hundreds of miles beneath the surface. Cave passages that connect mountain valleys to coastal plains. Systems that provide access to the underground world from multiple, widely separated entrance points, making it possible to disappear in one location and emerge far away beyond the reach of whatever catastrophe or threat had made surface travel dangerous. Archaeological evidence suggests that ancient peoples were indeed aware of these extensive underground networks and used them not just as temporary shelters, but as highways and communication routes. Cave paintings found deep underground, far from any natural light source, indicate that humans were regularly traveling through these systems with artificial lighting. Tools and artifacts discovered in cave chambers hundreds of miles from there. Places of origin suggest trade networks that moved through underground passages. Just refuge from surface catastrophes, independently of surface conditions for extended periods. A shadow world of rivers and chambers and connecting passages that paralleled the familiar geography above ground, offering a complete ecosystem that could sustain life even when the surface world became temporarily uninhabitable. to truly understand what life might have been like for those who retreated into these underground sanctuaries. We must try to imagine the profound psychological and physical adaptations that would have been necessary for extended subterranean existence, the slow rhythms of life in perpetual darkness, where time loses its surface meaning and human consciousness adapts to an entirely different relationship with the natural world. The silence of deep caves is unlike anything experienced on the surface. A complete absence of sound that can be so profound it becomes almost tangible, broken only by the distant drip of water, the whisper of air moving through stone passages, or the soft shuffle of footsteps echoing through chambers that may never have known sunlight in this world of eternal darkness. Human senses would have gradually adapted and sharpened, hearing becoming acute enough to navigate by the echo of footsteps or voices bouncing off stone walls, touch developing the sensitivity to read the texture of rock surfaces like a language, identifying safe passages, water sources, and familiar locations. Smell becoming refined enough to detect the subtle differences in air quality that might indicate connections to the surface, the presence of other humans, or changes in the underground environment that could signal danger or opportunity. The psychological adaptation to underground life would have required a fundamental shift in human consciousness, a letting go of the solar rhythm that has governed human activity for millennia. Without the daily cycle of light and darkness, sleep and waking patterns would have had to be restructured around other cues: the availability of food, the timing of group activities, the maintenance tasks required to keep underground communities functioning. This could have led to entirely different concepts of time, with days and nights replaced by work cycles and rest periods that bore no relationship to the world above. Archaeological evidence of extended underground habitation reveals the practical details of this hidden existence: fire pits positioned to maximize heat distribution while minimizing smoke accumulation, sophisticated drainage systems to manage water flow and prevent flooding of living areas, food storage techniques adapted to the constant cool temperatures and high humidity of cave environments, burial practices that reflect adapted spiritual beliefs about death and afterlife in the underground realm. The social structures of underground communities would necessarily have been different from those of surface societies. The need for absolute cooperation in such confined and potentially dangerous environments, the crucial importance of maintaining and passing on knowledge about navigation, resource management, and safety in the underground world, the development of new forms of leadership based on expertise in subterranean survival rather than traditional surface world criteria, the creation of new cultural practices and rituals adapted to life in perpetual darkness. Perhaps most remarkably, the evidence suggests that some underground communities not only survived but thrived in these conditions, developing sophisticated arts and technologies adapted to their unique environment. Cave paintings that required advanced techniques for creating and maintaining artificial light sources deep underground, tool-making techniques that took advantage of mineral resources available only in cave environments, possibly even forms of agriculture adapted to the constant temperature and humidity of underground chambers. This hidden world of extended underground existence represents one of the most remarkable chapters in human adaptability, demonstrating that when necessity demanded it, our ancestors could not only survive, but create meaningful and sustainable lives in environments so alien to surface experience that they might as well have been on another planet. As we emerge from contemplating the intimate details of underground existence and expand our view to consider the broader implications of these hidden chapters in human history, we begin to see how the experiences of underground refuge and subterranean survival might have woven themselves into the very fabric of human consciousness, becoming the foundation for myths and legends that continue to shape our imagination. Thousands of years after the original events that inspired them, the collective memory of humanity appears to carry within it the echo of these underground experiences, transformed over countless generations into stories that speak of hidden kingdoms, underworld journeys, and gods who dwell in the depths of the earth. The remarkable consistency of underworld myths across cultures that had no historical contact with each other suggests that these stories may be more than imaginative fantasy. They may represent the distilled wisdom of peoples who actually lived through periods when underground refuge was necessary for survival. The Greek journey of Persephone into the underworld, with its themes of seasonal death and rebirth, might echo memories of communities that disappeared underground during catastrophic winters and emerged months or years later, when surface conditions improved. The Mesopotamian epic of Inanna's descent into the underworld could preserve cultural memories of leadership structures that developed during extended periods of subterranean existence. Even more intriguing are the consistent technological and architectural details that appear in these myths. Descriptions of underground palaces with elaborate ventilation systems that bring fresh air from the surface. Stories of hidden rivers that flow through the underworld, providing transportation and fresh water. Accounts of vast underground storage chambers filled with treasures and food supplies. Magical doorways that can be sealed against invaders. Artificial lighting systems that illuminate the depths. These details are far too specific and technically accurate to be pure imagination, suggesting that they may be cultural memories of actual underground engineering and survival technologies. The spiritual and religious significance that many cultures attach to caves and underground spaces may also reflect the profound psychological impact of extended subterranean existence. The transformation of consciousness that would have occurred during long periods in the underground world. The development of heightened spiritual sensitivity in the profound silence and darkness of deep caves. The natural tendency to associate the underground realm with death and rebirth, based on the actual experience of communities that disappeared beneath the earth and later emerged, transformed by their underground experience. The persistence of these themes in modern culture, from literary works about hollow earth civilizations to contemporary urban legends about underground tunnel networks, suggests that the human fascination with hidden subterranean worlds continues to resonate deeply. In our collective consciousness, we seem to carry within our cultural DNA an awareness that there are alternatives to surface existence, hidden refuges that might still be available, if the need for them should arise again. This ongoing cultural resonance raises profound questions about what other memories might be preserved in the myths and legends that we have inherited from our ancestors. What other survival strategies and hidden knowledge might be encoded in stories that we have perhaps too quickly dismissed as mere fantasy? What other aspects of our past might be waiting to be rediscovered in the depths of both the earth and human memory? The intersection of myth and potential reality becomes even more provocative when we consider the tantalizing possibility that some underground civilizations might have achieved levels of sophistication that exceeded what we typically attribute to ancient peoples, developing technologies and knowledge systems that remained hidden from the surface world and were eventually lost when these hidden communities finally disappeared into the depths of time. While such ideas must be approached with appropriate scholarly caution, the sheer persistence of legends about advanced underground civilizations across multiple cultures and time periods suggests that dismissing them entirely might be premature. The legends speak of underground kingdoms, populated by beings who possessed knowledge and technologies that seemed magical to surface dwellers. The Tibetan stories of Shambhala describe an underground civilization that preserved ancient wisdom and advanced sciences, while the surface world descended into chaos and ignorance. Similar tales from South America tell of tunnel cities where golden artifacts were created using techniques that modern metallurgy struggles to replicate. The Aboriginal Australians speak of the rainbow serpent dwelling in underground chambers connected by tunnels that stretch across the continent, possibly preserving memories of actual underground infrastructure that connected distant regions. Archaeological discoveries have begun to hint at technologies and architectural capabilities that seem advanced for their supposed time periods. The precision of stonework in underground chambers that would be difficult to achieve even with modern tools, evidence of sophisticated understanding of acoustics in the design of underground spaces, with chambers that amplify sound in very specific ways, drainage and ventilation systems that demonstrate advanced knowledge of fluid dynamics and air circulation, possibly even evidence of artificial lighting systems that did not depend on open flames. Though the nature of such systems remains mysterious, the controversial discoveries of artifacts and structures that don't fit comfortably into accepted timelines of human technological development become even more intriguing when considered in the context of underground preservation. If advanced communities did retreat into the depths during catastrophic periods, their artifacts and technologies would have been protected from the surface processes of weathering, flooding, and destruction that have erased so much of the archaeological record. Underground environments provide ideal conditions for preservation, maintaining stable temperatures and humidity levels that can keep organic materials intact for thousands of years. Perhaps most intriguingly, some researchers have suggested that the knowledge and technologies developed by underground civilizations might not have been entirely lost, but could have been preserved in hidden repositories or passed down through secret traditions that maintained connections to ancient underground sites. The possibility that some groups might have continued to use and develop underground facilities throughout history, creating a hidden parallel timeline of human technological development that operated independently of surface civilizations. While such speculations venture into territory that mainstream archaeology approaches with considerable skepticism, the accumulating evidence for sophisticated ancient underground construction, combined with the persistent global traditions of hidden advanced civilizations, creates a compelling case for keeping an open mind about what might still be waiting to be discovered in the depths beneath our feet. This sense of hidden possibilities becomes even more compelling when we consider just how little of the Earth's subsurface realm has been systematically explored and mapped. How vast the underground world remains. Despite centuries of cave exploration and modern geological surveying techniques that have revealed only the most obvious and accessible portions of what may be an incredibly extensive network of natural and artificial underground spaces, the scale of what remains unknown beneath our feet is genuinely staggering. With new cave systems being discovered regularly, often in regions that were thought to be well explored, sometimes revealing underground landscapes that dwarf anything previously found in the same area. Recent technological advances in ground-penetrating radar, seismic mapping, and other subsurface detection methods have begun to reveal the true extent of underground voids and structures that exist beneath many archaeological sites. Surveys of ancient cities often show extensive underground components that have never been excavated. Ground-penetrating radar scans of areas around known underground sites frequently detect additional chambers and passage networks that extend far beyond what has been physically explored, even in regions that have been intensively studied for decades. New underground discoveries continue to change our understanding of the scope and complexity of ancient human underground activities. The practical challenges of underground exploration mean that vast areas of potential underground sites remain completely inaccessible to current archaeological investigation. Chambers that might be flooded with groundwater, passages that have been blocked by geological shifts or deliberate ancient sealing, underground spaces that can only be reached through extremely dangerous or technically difficult routes, areas where the surface environment is too politically unstable or economically inaccessible to permit systematic exploration. Even more significantly, the recognition that many underground sites may have been deliberately concealed by their creators means that traditional archaeological survey methods, which rely on surface indicators to identify potential dig sites, may plus be missing entire categories of underground facilities that were designed to leave no trace on the surface. Entrance points that were carefully camouflaged or sealed. Underground construction that was specifically planned to avoid creating surface disturbances. Ventilation systems that were designed to be undetectable from above. The emerging science of deep archaeology, which uses advanced sensing technologies to detect subsurface anomalies without the need for excavation, is beginning to reveal a hidden landscape of potential underground sites around the world. Mysterious voids beneath ancient monuments, networks of passages connecting sites that were previously thought to be unrelated, underground chambers in locations where no surface archaeology has suggested human presence, geometric patterns in subsurface density that suggest artificial construction in areas where no surface evidence exists. Perhaps most tantalizing of all are the underground spaces that have been detected but cannot yet be accessed due to technical limitations. Chambers that appear to exist hundreds of feet below the surface in solid rock. Underground voids of enormous size that seem to extend for miles beneath certain geological formations. Subsurface anomalies that suggest artificial structures of a scale that would dwarf any known ancient construction projects. The cumulative picture that emerges from this expanding awareness of underground mysteries is one of a hidden world that remains largely unexplored and unknown, where the possibility of major archaeological discoveries continues to exist on a scale that could fundamentally alter our understanding of human history and ancient capabilities. As we draw together all these threads of evidence, speculation, and mystery into a final contemplation of what they might mean for our understanding of human history and our species' relationship with the hidden world beneath our feet, we find ourselves standing at the edge of a profound recognition that transcends the specific details of any individual underground site or ancient legend. Whether or not entire advanced civilizations truly lived and thrived in subterranean cities, whether the myths of hollow earth kingdoms preserve actual historical memories or represent purely symbolic explorations of human psychological depths, the very persistence and universality of these ideas speaks to something fundamental about the human condition and our deep understanding of what survival might require when the familiar world above ground becomes untenable. The image that emerges from our journey through underground mysteries is one of human resilience and adaptability that extends far beyond what we typically acknowledge in our histories. The recognition that our ancestors possessed not just the technical skills to create sophisticated underground refuges, but the psychological and cultural flexibility to adapt their entire way of life to subterranean existence when circumstances demanded it. The understanding that human civilization has always existed in a state of creative tension between the desire for stability and the need to respond to catastrophic change, with the underground world representing the ultimate expression of our species' determination to survive and preserve knowledge and culture, regardless of what disasters might sweep across the surface world. Perhaps the most profound insight to emerge from contemplating these hidden chapters of human history is the recognition that the boundaries between myth and reality, between historical fact and cultural memory, may be far more fluid than our modern analytical mindset typically assumes. That the stories our ancestors told about underground kingdoms and hidden civilizations may represent a form of knowledge preservation that operates according to different rules than written historical records, encoding practical survival information within narrative frameworks that ensure its transmission across generations, even when the original circumstances that created the need for such knowledge have long since passed. The underground world thus becomes more than just a physical refuge from surface catastrophes. It becomes a metaphor for the hidden depths of human potential, the reserve capacities for adaptation and survival that remain dormant until crisis calls them forth. The recognition that beneath the familiar surface of human civilization lie vast, unexplored territories of possibility, alternative ways of organizing society and preserving knowledge that might be activated again if the need should arise, as we contemplate the dark tunnels that may stretch endlessly beneath our feet, connecting chambers that have not known human presence for millennia, echoing with the footsteps of those who may have escaped the catastrophes of ages past. We are reminded that human history is far richer and more mysterious than the surface. Archaeological record can reveal that our species carries within its collective memory the knowledge of how to disappear beneath the earth when the world above becomes too dangerous, how to create hidden sanctuaries where civilization can continue its slow evolution in darkness, waiting for the moment when it is safe to emerge once again into the light. The ultimate message whispered by these underground mysteries is perhaps not about what happened in the distant past, but about what remains possible in an uncertain future. The reassurance that human ingenuity and determination have repeatedly found ways to preserve the essential elements of civilization through even the most catastrophic disruptions. That somewhere in the depths of the earth, in chambers we have yet to discover, or in the hidden recesses of human knowledge, the seeds of renewal and regeneration continue to wait, patient as stone, ready to sprout new growth when the conditions are right for civilization to begin again in the end. The question of whether advanced underground civilizations actually existed becomes less important than the recognition that they could exist, that human capability and Earth's hidden geography provide all the necessary components for such refuges to be created whenever the need arises. And in that possibility lies both the haunting mystery of what we may have lost to the depths of time and the reassuring promise of what we might yet become when the surface world once again demands that we remember how to disappear into the protecting darkness beneath our feet, carrying with us everything that matters most about human wisdom and human hope. The echoes of footsteps in ancient tunnels continue to reverberate through the stone corridors of memory, a sound that speaks not of endings but of continuance, not of loss but of transformation, reminding us that the story of human civilization extends far deeper than we have yet dared to explore.